Alright guys, real quick before we get started, I'm actually recording this audio after I've done the review. There's been some breaking news apparently, and in process of uploading this video I received this information, so I stopped my export, went back to add this to the edit, and then I'm going to export this video. So this video once again is going to get released a little bit later than usual, and I really apologize guys. I want to get these videos out earlier in the week. It's just really tough between my schedule, and I'm just starting to figure out timing and everything on this stuff. However, I am happy that I do the breakdowns a little bit later in the week and closer to the fight card, because as things get canceled or rescheduled, I have a more up-to-date prediction for you guys. And that being said, there has been some changes to this card last minute. It seems like Azaitar was doing some sketchy stuff, gave up his wristband to some unknown individual to come in to the UFC past security. Actually, the way he came in was through some balconies, or scooted through some balconies across to Azaitar's room, dropped off a bag. Security caught him. Long story short, Azaitar is no longer on the card, but also he's no longer part of the UFC. They have cut him completely, cut ties with him completely. Now, another thing that happened was that the Haqparast fight, along with the Tsarukyan fight, that is no longer happening because Haqparast actually got sick, and Tsarukyan actually came in a pound overweight. However, because of the Azaitar situation, Frevola is now going to be fighting Tsarukyan. And I don't have a prediction for this, new fight that's been set up. But if I have to go off the top of my head, I'm still going to go with Tsarukyan. I know he didn't make weight, and he might have had some issues in the weight cut. But I'm just going to go with Tsarukyan for that fight. But that's the update to this video. So you're not going to see a prediction now for obviously the Frevola fight against Azaitar or the Haqparast fight. So I hope that clears some stuff up for you guys. Glad I could get this update in there. And once again, sorry for the delay, but let's get into the rest of the card. So Amir Albazi versus Zhalgas Zhumagulov. Amir has 8 wins by sub and 4 by knockout. Zhumagulov has 6 wins by KO and 6 by decision. Now, will this end early or go to the full 3 rounds? I think that's a question that we got to ask. I think if Amir is going to win, we can see this end early, and I believe if we do see it as a decision, it might be more on the side of Zhumagulov. If Albazi can get the takedowns and maintain pressure above Zhumagulov, then this will be quite the one-sided fight, though. If Zhumagulov, on the other hand, he can wrestle with Amir and avoid the submission and knockout attempts that Amir tries to use on Zhumagulov, then Zhumagulov might actually win. It's actually quite probable that could happen. Amir, on the other hand, he might catch Zhumagulov early, or look in to do the submission at some point over the 3 rounds. And Zhumagulov's striking, it's a little lackluster, and he usually isn't overly assertive in this case with his striking, other than when he's closing the distance or he's moving into wrestle or grapple for those kinds of opportunities. But Amir has decent ground game and wrestling, so if Zhumagulov can't compete there, then he won't have a tough fight as expected. I predict that Albazi will win this, so I'm going to go for Albazi on this. I could see Zhumagulov doing it if we do see him sort of be able to at least compete with Albazi as far as the wrestling goes, and maybe some of the grappling. And I don't know, I really got to see if this game goes to the ground, but I got Albazi. I trust in that for sure. Next up, we got Lentz versus Movsar Evloev. So Evloev is coming into this fight with a perfect record of 13-0. 6 of his wins were by decision, while the remaining 7 were by sub or knockout. And he's 10 years younger than Lentz. And Movsar, he also has a 4.5-inch reach advantage here. But he is the shorter fighter by just a 1-inch difference. Nick is pretty experienced, but he seems to be holding that gatekeeper status, passing of the torch status. where he's fighting guys and kind of getting nowhere out of it. Younger guys are coming into the UFC, and they tend to fight against Lentz in order to move up the rankings. Now, another thing to explore here is that I don't think this is a good matchup for Evloev. I don't know what Nick was thinking when he took this fight. He was supposed to fight earlier this month, but that fight was canceled, and then he pulled into a fight that I think was actually worse for him than the original scheduled fight. I mean, Evloev is no joke. He definitely has the edge here, but this will most likely go the distance, and he will look to outscore Lentz throughout the long run. Movsar is a major favorite in this fight at, I believe, a plus 450, and with good reason. He has good defensive skills, and he'll be able to prevent Lentz from pushing pressure or pushing the pace or potentially taking him down. Nick is pretty widespread in his win column. He has won most of his fights by decision and submission, but has about roughly 7 or 8 knockouts under his belt as well. So Nick can win this fight in various ways, and Movsar will have to be prepared to go the distance, prevent submissions, and avoid knockouts all in one go. But he can still implement his game plan while doing that. Nick moved down to featherweight 2 fights ago, and he's actually lost back-to-back fights when he did that. He might not perform well in this fight and in this weight class, whereas Evloev has performed flawlessly throughout all his 13 fights in this weight class, and he is a natural featherweight. I believe before that he has also fought at bantamweight, and he's had a couple catch weight matches, but nothing too suspect. He's looked great in both those divisions, and the funny thing is, when it came with the catch weight bouts, he still won those too. This shows that the weight and the weight cut factor don't seem to be an issue for Evloev at all. My obvious pick and probably most confident pick of the night for this event is this card, and my most obvious pick is Movsar Evloev, and I believe he's going to do it by decision. I'm fairly confident on that. Next up, guys, we got Andrew Sanchez versus Makhmud Muradov. Okay, Muradov has won 16 of his fights by knockout, and 5 of his wins went to a decision. And, Muradov, he's on a 13-fight win streak right now. Sanchez, on the other hand, he's won 7 times by knockout, and only 4 of his wins have actually gone to the decision. Both of these guys have the KO opportunities, but Muradov has a major edge, in that factor at least, than Sanchez does. Muradov is really well-rounded, and I can see him moving with a lot of power and pressure, as opposed to Sanchez. I think that'll be a huge difference between the two fighters. And Muradov, he's mostly lost by subs and decisions as well in the past. If you look at his record in recent years, he's winning a lot, and he's mainly winning by knockout or stoppages. And I mean, Muradov hasn't fought in over a year, but he had 2 main fights get canceled in 2020, along with 2 other fights that were attempted to be scheduled but didn't happen after those original fights got canceled. He had been training for a fight, up until this moment. It just took him a while to get a fight lined up prior to this. And, in my opinion, I love Sanchez as a fighter, but he has low defensive IQ, at least when his stand-up is concerned. He takes a lot of strikes with a fair low amount of output, so for every 1 punch he throws, he'll get attacked with 3 or 4 punches back. And this can, cause a problem as the fight moves on. For every punch he lands, imagine he gets hit 3 or 4 times, over the course of 3 rounds, that's going to become a problem. So unless he ends this early, I could see this playing a huge factor in the outcome of the fight. Now, I don't think he has a problem defensively when it comes to maybe even the wrestling or the ground game or the grappling. Not saying that he's an amazing grappler or wrestler, but I just mean when it comes to striking specifically, he seems to have low output. Sanchez, we see him beat all these fighters and look really, really solid, but it seems like when he gets to this one level of really skilled fighters, he tends to fall back down the ladder. And in this fight, Sanchez was actually supposed to fight Muniz, but that got canceled, and they were able to schedule Muradov here. I believe these fighters are both prepared for this. On a side note, today I found out that it's not a good idea to eat pepperoni just before you want to film or record yourself for about, anywhere between 20 minutes to 1 hour, because my throat is killing me, and I'm not even a quarter way through this card. Going back, Sanchez has been in the UFC for the past like 4 or 5 years, whereas Muradov is coming into the UFC with only 2 fights within the organization so far. And you know, though one of those 2 fights was against Di Chirico, which isn't a win to brag about, but maybe now it is, considering Di Chirico just slightly redeemed himself in that last fight. But realistically, if we're going based on what we know about Di Chirico, that's not a hugely overly impressive win compared to, I guess, the fights that Sanchez has had against the caliber of fighters Sanchez has fought. I think Sanchez has the best opportunity to win if this fight maybe stays standing and maybe he gets the knockout. I do believe it does end early, and I do believe it will be a TKO or KO. And my final pick for this fight is going to be Muradov, and I wouldn't be surprised if it ends early by KO. Okay, guys, so Khalil Rountree versus Marcin Prachnio. Right away, I got to tell you guys, you know, these are both fighters that they either show up or they don't show up at all. There's no middle ground. There's no gray area. They're either going to bring it or they're going to get tossed. And that's the way I kind of feel about this fight too. I feel like it could go either way. I feel like both of them can bring it and both of them can totally screw it up. So for that fact, I'm going to tell you right now, this for me is a no bet. However, who do I have more faith in? Well, let's discuss. Right away, Prachnio, he's got 10 wins by knockout. Rountree has 6 wins by knockout. So we can kind of assess the fact that one of these guys might actually be going down tonight. Or not tonight, but on Saturday. And as I said, both of these fighters, they're hit or miss. So they could either look really good or they're going to look poorly. Prachnio was knocked out recently, and Rountree was coming off a couple losses in the last few fights that he's had. I think of 3 fights, he lost 2. I feel the same way about Prachnio as I do and did about Di Chirico. But that being said, we all saw what happened there. I'm still not too high on this guy. I feel like he's just a level below UFC, like the UFC average fighter. And speaking of that, like, let's be real, that caliber has actually elevated in recent years. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I've definitely noticed that. And that's why they're probably eliminating a bunch of these contracts and a bunch of these quote unquote excess fighters. It's just they're realizing that they have developed a new high, a new low to their high. How about that? There's a new bottom in town, you know, and it's not the bottom that we had 10 years ago. A lot of these athletes, they're just more elite. And we're starting to see that the gaps between people are starting to get really, really close and tight. And I see a lot of good things happening in the UFC for the future. But back on this fight, Rountree has these moments where he's looking amazing, and then he ends up like having fights where it looks like he's a completely different fighter, and he's not having any success at all, or he's getting knocked out or whatever. Prachnio, he's also essentially lost his last 3 fights in a row, but prior to moving up to UFC, he had a very good record. Maybe he's just in over his head, and maybe, you know, there's quote-unquote levels to this sport, just as I was sort of preaching about earlier. But Rountree, he's lost 2 of his last 3 fights, as I mentioned, and when, you know, he loses, it usually happens by stoppage or submission, and this is too tough of a fight to pick against because, you know, the last Saturday card, when I wasn't high on Moras or Mello, I feel the same way about this fight. And, you know, in this case, I'm going to pick Rountree to get it done, as I just feel like he has the better chance and opportunities here, and he's probably, you know, more well-rounded as far as UFC fights go. But we've seen him look really bad in performances, which makes me a little bit suspect. I can see this going to the decision, but I could see it end early as well. So if you want to look into making those kinds of bets, be my guest. But this is no bet for me at all. But I am going Rountree to win. Next up, we got Sara McMann versus Julianna Pena. This is another no bet right away. Sorry for the back-to-back no bets, but it is what it is, guys. Sara, on one hand, she has 6 of her wins by decision and 4 by submission. You know what? No, guys. No, I'm not doing that to you. I'm not no betting this one. I'm not going to say no bet on this one. People might be scared of this one. I'm not afraid. Okay, Sara, she's got 6 of her wins by decision and 4 by sub. Sara, she's the older fighter, but she's also the more experienced in the octagon at least. And, you know, Sara had actually recently a bunch of grappling matches, and she won 2 out of 3 of those matches. I wouldn't be surprised to expect a lot of grappling game out of her showing up here, especially after having 3 grappling matches back to back. Pena, on the other hand, tends to look better in most of her fights in general. She's got this extra kick to her. I don't know. I want to say maybe technically speaking, but some of you could disagree here. But she just tends to look better as far as the way she throws, the way she lands, maybe her technique. That's not to say she is the more skilled fighter. We're going to get into that. Don't worry. I'm not sure if McMann is going to want to stay standing with Pena, though. Just because Pena seems to have a 3-inch reach advantage. Pena has suffered recently, losing 2 of her last 3 fights. So maybe McMann doesn't have trouble or isn't going to think twice about that. Prior to that, she was on a 7-fight win streak, but that dates way back between 2013 to 2016. So that's not any time recently. The thing is about Pena, though, she can win it any other way, meaning she's got 4 wins by subs, 3 of her wins by decision, 3 others by knockout. So, you know, McMann, she's got to worry about all 3 ways to lose. Because she's going up against a girl who can go the distance, she could pull off the submission, and she can knock you out. And she's young. Young and hopefully hungry? I don't know. That's debatable. I think Pena was showing a lot of promise, and to be honest, McMann hasn't fought the toughest competition lately, whereas Pena has competed against elite fighters recently, right? Like Germaine Durandamy, and, you know, sure, she's getting beat by some of these people, but she is beating and fighting the elite. And then you kind of compare the girls' records, and I personally think that Pena has actually won against better competition than McMann. I also think age will play a factor here. You know, Sara McMann is tough. Like, she's a great overall fighter. I normally wouldn't want to bet against her. And I just feel like Pena has some advantages here that can really expose Sara. Sara might want to look for a submission attempt, as Pena has actually lost twice by submission. Do you want to bet that this goes the distance? That might be something you guys might want to look at if you're looking to bet this fight. This is the tough part. I want to give it to Pena because I feel like she's got the young, hungry edge to her. But Sara, man, like, you got to kind of give it to her. If you were kind of asked, okay, which of these 2 girls can win 10 fights first, who would you pick? That's the question I asked myself when I was trying to do this. Whether it be against each other or against a random set of females, who would you pick to win 10 fights first? And in my mind, I got Sara McMann. I think she's just more disciplined. And, like, I had been going back and forth between this fight, and that's why I have it as a no bet. But I didn't want to do that to you guys because I felt like, you know what, I at least got to put myself in a position like I am betting when I'm making these predictions for you guys, so that I'm able to actually articulate my points and come up with at least the best formula of a response as far as who I think is going to win to help you guys make an informed decision yourselves. So for the fact of the experience, and I mean, I'm looking at Sara, I've been following her, and she looks good. You can call her old, you can call her whatever you want. At the end of the day, she's disciplined. That's something we sometimes lack in seeing between Julianna Pena, and I think that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of UFC fighters who don't exactly appreciate Julianna Pena. So for that fact, I'm going with Sara McMann to win this fight by decision, or if you want to risk it, go by submission. All right, so the next fight up, Brad Tavares versus Antonio Carlos Jr., otherwise known as Shoeface for whatever reason. Carlos Jr. comes into the fight with a 5-inch reach advantage, apparently, against Brad Tavares. I don't know if that's true, but that's crazy if he's got 5 inches on him. That's what she said. 9 of Carlos Jr.'s wins were by submission, and 10 of Tavares' wins were by decision, 5 of them by knockout. Carlos Jr. might want to take Tavares down here. However, Tavares has a really good takedown defense as far as what we've seen from him in the past. That's not to say he can't be taken down. but it's not going to be an easy task for Carlos Jr. to get that done. Carlos will be able to take advantage of the reach when it comes to the striking and the stand-up game, but we haven't seen him take too much advantage of that in the past before. If you actually watch his old fights, he doesn't utilize his reach that much. So can we really rely on him to bring that to the table here? I don't think so. So don't let that reach aspect fool you. Carlos probably does have an advantage in the grappling and for sure the ground game, it seems. But Carlos has lost his last 2 fights. But before that, he was on a 6-fight win streak. Although he hasn't fought much from 2018 to 2021, a lot of his bouts, once again, were canceled between that time. He was training. He was just unlucky to have all these fights fall through various reasons. I'm sure recently, including due to COVID, probably. So my one concern with Carlos is that he could run into some cardio issues near the end of the fight if it does go towards the distance. Keep in mind that although Carlos has had the advantage in the submission, we have seen Tavares get subbed. So although we might, it's not likely that might happen, you got to keep it in mind because we have seen Tavares get submitted before. Carlos Jr. can pull the sub, and he does have the advantage in that. Carlos on the other hand, no. Carlos has finished over 70 to 80% of his fights, and most of those were by submission. Right? So you think about 80% of a fight, of his fights he's won, and then majority of those were by subs. So Tavares has to be careful here. And Tavares, he's also on a 2-fight losing streak against great opponents, though. So you can't sort of give him too much flack for that. Prior to those 2 fights, he was on a 4-fight win streak. And these guys are quite comparable, except Tavares tends to have more output overall throughout his fights. He might be a bit more active and spends more time on the offensive as opposed to the defensive. Carlos, however, he doesn't mind being defensive, and he'll even take fighters to the ground where he can take advantage of them. I think this is where Carlos will have the most success if the fight goes there. So I think if Carlos can get him down, it's actually going to be Antonio Carlos Jr. that wins. If not, Tavares has a great shot. I am going to go with Antonio Carlos Jr. to win this fight. I'm going to say it's either going to go by submission or by decision. Next up, Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Ribas. Amanda Ribas has been kicking some serious butt while she's been in the UFC. She has a record of 10 wins and 1 loss, which is pretty damn good for women's MMA. Ribas is on a 5-fight win streak, and 3 of her wins come by knockout, 4 come by submission. She's also won all her fights in a variety of ways, whether it be sub, KO, decision. Rodriguez, on the other hand, she's fairly well-rounded on her feet. She really likes to use that Muay Thai style, almost using elbows and knees, that stand-up on the clinch, getting close, tight shots against the cage, all of that jazz. And, Rodriguez, this is the important part. She has 5 wins by KO. And why is that important? Because Amanda Ribas was knocked out in the only fight that she had lost. So you might want to keep that in mind before you bet on this fight. Because that's one piece of information I bet you a lot of people are forgetting. Will Amanda Ribas get knocked out by Marina Rodriguez? That's something you guys seriously got to consider. Because I think Amanda Ribas is a great fighter. But anybody can get caught. And if you've been caught before and your only loss is by knockout, and you're going against someone who's got excellent striking skills and has knocked out a few people herself, well, it's going to be problems. So Ribas, she's got excellent takedown defense and striking defense, so it'll be difficult for Rodriguez to get those knees and punches in. But if this gets going to the ground, I believe Ribas has a huge advantage. Keep in mind, Ribas, she's been KO'd before, as I mentioned, and that's a little concerning. Since Rodriguez is more of a striker, I don't see this being a wrestling or grappling game. But that might be what Ribas's plan will be, is to take the striking capabilities away from Rodriguez. And in order to do that, she might look to actually take down Rodriguez. And I think that's likely to happen. Rodriguez has won before by KO, TKO. In only 1 or 2 of her professional fights. I'm not sure if we can say that the KO will be a factor for Ribas to worry about, but it is something that's on my mind. Rodriguez recently lost against Esparza in her last fight, but she has had wins against people like Jessica Aguilera, Tisha Torres, Maria Oliveira, and Ribas has beat lesser competition in my opinion, but she has beat Dern, and Dern's only has like one loss on her record, and that is simply due to Ribas. Otherwise Dern would be undefeated. So this is something that you guys got to keep in mind, because both of these women, you know, contrary to popular belief, that and Amanda Ribas, you know, having that 10-1 record, looking excellent. Marina Rodriguez is not someone that you just, you know, should sort of look over. So here's what I'm going to tell you. I do think Ribas wins the fight. I really do. But if you're a value bettor, you might want to look to put money on Rodriguez if she's a huge underdog. I don't know what the odds are at right now, but they're on the screen. If I'm showing this, then I've definitely got them at this point, but I don't get the odds before I make the video, because I don't like to have them skew my perception when I'm making these videos. I want to be honest about my pick, and if I see the underdog pick, then it might sway my judgment. So I don't look at the odds while I make these videos usually, unless I've already seen them randomly. So just keep that in mind when you're watching my videos. I try to do these videos with very little input other than what I have to work with myself and my own experience, and then obviously looking at topology and stuff like that. But I try not to look at the odds because I feel like that sways the way I think. I do give this fight to Amanda Ribas. I do think she probably wins by decision, and I think that's the safest bet you can make. However, if there's no value on Ribas and she's a huge favorite, then you might want to put some money on Rodriguez to win it, maybe even by KO. I'm sure the odds on that would be quite sweet. If it happens, you'll probably make some good cash. But my pick is going to be Amanda Ribas by decision. All right, next up, Jessica I versus Joanne Calderwood. Another no bet for me here right away, but I am confident in who I think will win. These two, they've got very similar records as well as height and reach. Both fighters seem to get most of their wins by decision. However, Calderwood has had 5 wins by knockout, and I has had 3 wins by knockout. You know, I'm not, and I haven't ever been highly sold on Jessica. She talks up a big game. Like, after she wins a fight, she's so proud of herself, and she's talking to Joanne, and she's like, Dana, my chance for the belt. Yeah, I'm the best. See, I can do anything. But it's like she hypes her own game up, and then everyone else is like, okay, rainbow butterflies, like, show us. And then you kind of watch her fights, and they're lackluster, and she's not really doing anything. And I feel like she thinks she's bigger than she is. And that's exactly what she is. She's bigger than she is, and she's not that big anymore. You know, like, not many people talk about Jessica I like she's some hot shit. Unfortunately, I'm not saying she's a bad person. I'm not saying I don't like her attitude and her positivity and cool beans, but the way she talks her big game and then fights, it's just, I don't like when fighters do that. If you talk a big game, then, you know, back it up, and if you can't back it up, don't talk big game. And between the two, I mean, Calderwood, she's had issues in the past, like, you know, a couple losses or, you know, some downfalls. But she improves time after time, is what I see at least, as opposed to Jessica I's like mediocre losses and wins. Calderwood's output and striking is pretty consistent too. She's always pushing, always throwing punches and kicks. She's trying to always be assertive. Jessica might not throw as many attempts, but she's also fairly aggressive in her own ways. You know, she tends to be more picky and conservative with her striking compared to Calderwood, though. You know, I might be fierce and aggressive, but, you know, Calderwood could pick I apart with the patience and technical skill as well. Both of these fighters have lost against the same competitors, but Jessica I beat Chikagian and Calderwood did not. And I don't mean to bring MMA math here, but it's just worth noting. I'm pretty certain regardless who gets it here, it'll go the distance. I'm going to go with Calderwood to get the win on this. Alright guys, here we are, co-main event of the evening. Oh, sorry, that was horrible. Why did I start singing? You know why? Because I'm fucking excited for this card, guys. But I apologize. I'll never fucking let that happen again. I'll never do that again. I promise. I apologize for your ears. Let's get into the co-main event, though, because this is the fight that I'm actually more excited for. I'm more excited for this than the main event. I'm not going to lie. I think a lot of you guys are, too. I think fight fans, like true fight fans, are more excited for this fight. So let's break it down for you. Dan Hooker versus Michael Chandler. And this is what I'm going to call my risky pick of the evening. So where we have no bets and where we have, confident picks, we have risky picks. And this is what I call my risky pick of the night. Right, both of these fighters have 7 wins by submission, and Hooker has 10 wins by KO, where Chandler has 9 wins by knockout. Hooker comes in with 6-inch reach advantage and a 2-inch height advantage. Chandler coming in through Bellator, coming in with a lot of hype into the UFC, and well-deserved hype, that is. I'm not talking trash about Chandler. I think he's a great fighter. However, am I the only one that thinks Hooker has fought the better competition? I mean, I look at the list, and there's a lot of hype here on Chandler, and it seems like this is a fight that's set up where he's supposed to come in and put a stamp of approval on his name, and he's going to get this big win against Dan Hooker, and, he's going to show up into the UFC and drop some jaws, or I don't know. But I think it's unwise to count out Dan Hooker in any way here. I think Chandler will have a tough time with Hooker, especially with the reach advantage. And Hooker also comes from one of the best camps and coaching teams, City Kickboxing, especially within the past few years. We've seen a lot of success coming from that team. And Hooker has, a huge advantage in the coaching and fighting IQ, I would say, when it comes to that. I think Chandler will have more success if they grapple or wrestler. I think Chandler will have more success if they grapple or wrestle. Whereas if they stand up, it's going to be Hooker's advantage and Hooker's game all day. Another thing to consider is that Hooker has only ever been knocked out once, and only on one occasion. So you can't really rely on Chandler being able to knock him out. Also remember, Chandler is coming into the UFC on a lot of hype. To put that in perspective, Ben Askren came in on a lot of hype. We saw what happened with him. So just because a fighter is hyped up, and I'm not putting Ben Askren in the same category as Michael Chandler, but my point being is that a lot of fighters come in that are expected to do well in the UFC, and they don't. So is that going to be what happens here with Chandler? It's a possibility, and especially when you bring in a fighter and then you put him at the very top just because he belonged at the very top in another organization, but that other organization doesn't have the same level of caliber of fighters as the top 10 in the UFC. They just don't. I'm not knocking Bellator. I love Bellator, but most of their top 10 fighters, might be in the top 20 of the UFC, not necessarily the top 10 overall. And sure, they do have some top 10 fighters that would be top 10 fighters in the UFC. I just can't say that for sure Chandler is one of those people. So when someone comes from Bellator over to the UFC, I would love, regardless what their, ranking is globally or ranking is within, whether it be Bellator or UFC, I would love for them to just get their, dip their toes in the water first. Let's, if you think you're top 5, maybe fight a top 10, top 20. Don't put yourself all the way at the top first. Let's see what you can do. I think that should just be the case with every fighter that comes into a new organization, but I don't own the UFC, so who the fuck am I to judge? That being said, I do think that Chandler can compete with the top of the food chain for sure, but personally I see Hooker as an overall better fighter. I think he's fought the better competition. I think, Chandler does have this sort of championship status, and he could get that in the UFC if he's underestimated, but really, it's very likely that this fight ends early, especially if Chandler wins. And I'm not saying Chandler is going to win. I'm saying if he wins. But I'll say Dan Hooker by decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's an early stoppage either on his end. So Dan Hooker, either by decision or knockout. I'm going with Hooker by decision. Main event of the evening. Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor 2. Rematch event. We all saw what happened in the last match. I mean, both these guys are the same age and height, but McGregor has that slight 2-inch reach advantage over Poirier. And was it that 2-inch reach advantage that won McGregor the round and the match in 2014, which is over 7 years ago, when they first fought in the first round by knockout? That's exactly how and when Conor McGregor beat Dustin Poirier the first time. Now, a long time has passed since then, and these fighters have accomplished a lot since then, both of them. Conor has 19 wins by knockout, where Dustin has 13. Dustin also has 6 wins by sub and 7 by decision. The interesting thing about Conor is, like, Conor can be absent from fighting for long periods, but he could just come in and fight, and it's as if he's never even left. He just, like, never misses a beat. It's great. I love how he could just come in just like that, no problem, and, you know, he's just fighting again, and I hope he fights regularly. And, you know, on a side note, guys, I gotta say, I've seen a lot of Conor McGregor's recent, I guess, like, you know, interviews and some PR stuff that they've been doing, and man, this guy has matured a lot this year. Wow. I don't know if it's the fact that, you know, maybe he's got, you know, a PR person, or maybe because he's got kids, he's kind of like becoming a dad or what, but he's totally changed. He's still got that same sort of Conor attitude, but it's more respectable and it's more respectful, and I really appreciate that, because I am not a fan of the Conor McGregor ego. I'm a fan of his fighting, but I was never a fan of his ego, and he's kind of starting to win me over again, like the Conor McGregor that I first knew before he was rich. Like, it's kind of like we're seeing that again. Now, Conor's only 4 losses came with good reason, meaning he shouldn't be upset over those losses. He essentially lost to the best of the best in the sport, and then Floyd Mayweather, who was in boxing, so it can't even count towards MMA. Also, guys, I actually just stopped recording my video editing my video so that I could add this portion in. I was just watching, I guess, the pre-fight interviews, and Dustin Poirier looked really weird. He looked like either super nervous or tired, or I don't know what, but he did not look good. So I just wanted to add this portion in here and then export the video, because I thought that was a really key piece of information. So, you know, that being said, I don't think I actually need to say anything else about this fight. That last minute sight of Dustin and the pre-fight conference that they had, press conference that they had, that kind of scared me and worried me. I wasn't going to pick Dustin to win anyway, but I'm definitely going to tell you that he's definitely more than likely not going to win this fight at all. Conor, heavy favorite. This is probably going to be my pick of the night now, and I'm going with McGregor, and I think he gets it done by a knockout in the first round. Maybe first round. I'm gonna go first round knockout for Conor McGregor, and I don't think Poirier stands a chance right now. Not after the way he looked in that interview. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but comment down below if you have. But here's a random fact for you. Some random, MMA math for you. McGregor lost to Joe Duffy in 2010, but Poirier beat Joe Duffy in 2016. You guys know what that means, right? It means absolutely nothing, because it's MMA math and it doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, guys, I think we're all on the same page here. I think we all know that McGregor's going to win, and that last sight of Dustin Poirier on the scales. I mean, I had this whole sheet of stuff written out, of notes of good qualities of Dustin Poirier and how this fight might be closer than I think. And then I saw his look on his face during the interviews, and I was just like, oh man, this is not very good. I'm going to go back and actually just say, bet Conor. There's nothing else to this right now, guys. I hate being this honest, but I'm being honest. And I love Dustin Poirier, but he's not going to win this fight. I got Conor to win it by KO in the first round, and that's all she wrote. All right, guys, that's the end of this video for the UFC 257 fight predictions. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you guys watching, all the subs that we got recently, all the new viewers. If you're new to this channel, which most of you probably are, do me a favor. If you appreciate the content, hit that like button. If you appreciate it enough where you feel like I will provide you with value in content every week after week, which I promise you I will, then hit that subscribe button. And if you're unsure, then heck, comment down below. Let me know your picks. And for those of you who do well, and I see, maybe I'll give you a shout out on the next video. But guys, either way, I appreciate you guys checking out the video, watching, joining me in this breakdown. And I got to give you guys props and a big thank you for that. So thank you all for, checking out my video and checking out my channel. And for those of you who have subscribed, big ups. I really appreciate it. And I hope to catch you guys next time on the next prediction video. I will probably do a recap video for 257 as well, so stay tuned for that. If you haven't checked my other recap videos, you can go ahead and check that out on the channel. I try to make these edits, I try to put in some good time into making these edits worth it for you guys to watch. So let me know what you guys think, and I hope to catch you guys next time. I am the MMA Hoodie. Peace out.